All right, guys, let's see if that one worked. Goodness sakes, having some issues with StreamYard. I usually use Restream, but StreamYard, I have some technology that I can use with it. So I was hoping to use that, just waiting to hear to see if we're live on Rumble. There we go. All right. Geez, that was crazy, wasn't it? Oh, and my video's backwards on Rumble. That's going to make me weird out. It's okay. Here we are. So, welcome to Life from a Near-Death Experience. We do this show from 8:30 till 9:30. We'll have to cut it close this time. And tonight, I wanted to, and if you've never been to the show, I'm Penny. And tonight, I wanted to talk about embracing the experience, like I just did with this whole mess, right? Um, Hold on a second. Let me make this a little smaller. All right. And I got this book. I told you guys about this. I got this book from my friend John, and I know it's backwards, but I don't know how to fix that. Life is Messy. And I sat down, I got up early Saturday morning and read it cover to cover, which I generally I generally like to do. I like to try to read a book in one setting. I used to read 3 or 4 books a week, but haven't been able to do that as much lately. But let me see if my comments are on. You guys, if you're seeing me, let me know. It should be. Yeah, it looks like we're live everywhere. All right. So anyway, this book is called Life is Messy. And it is, it's, if you haven't, it's not a long read. It's just, let's see how many pages it is here. Not many, like 196 pages. So it's a quick read, and it's real practical, which I love. And just some really good, I don't know. I almost felt like I could have written it myself, just because it was so much in line with what I was thinking. Thank you so much. But there's this, there's a little thing in here, and I wanted to read it to you. It's called Life. It's called, is it Life? No, Autobiography in 5 chapters. And I just thought this was really cool. And it's 5 very short chapters, or I wouldn't read it. Autobiography in 5 short chapters. And it was written by, I always like to give credit, poet Portia Nelson. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find my way out. So just kind of apply this to your life as we're reading through these. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. And I just thought, that is the most succinct, beautiful description of life I've ever heard. And I wondered how many of us get stuck on one of the chapters, right? So we've all been, you walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, I fall in, I'm lost, I'm helpless. It isn't my fault, and it takes me forever to find my way out. What's interesting is I find that some people get stuck in chapter 1 for whatever reason, and wherever your chapter 1 is. Like chapter 1 could be any situation in your life. So say, like, when I went through my divorce, I fell in that hole. It wasn't my fault. I didn't see it coming. And it took me forever to find my way out. And if you're not careful, you can get stuck in that hole, right? And we've all been there, grief or depression or anything. We've all been there. Or, a health crisis. I mean, just anything in your life could put you there. Chapter 2, you walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Isn't that interesting? I know of people who've struggled with addiction, and they've tried over and over to get through it. And they just, they did fall back in, right? And instead of getting out and staying out, they keep falling into the hole. They get stuck on this step. Because they're kind of powerless over it at that point. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. How many things, I always tell people this, if you see a recurring theme in your life, you need to start asking yourself some questions. Because if you're always losing jobs, or relationships are always falling apart, or, whatever it is for you, there's this point in time where, and I say this to people, they don't generally like it. You're looking particularly lovely. Well, thank you. Um, they don't generally like it when I say it, but I'll sometimes say to people, do you realize that this seems to be a common theme in your life? And the only common thread in this common theme is you. So if every relationship that you get into, um, the person treats you badly, you're making bad decisions about relationships. Sure, the person's treating you badly, but if you keep getting into those relationships, you need to sort you out. And that was one of the things I went through after my divorce. I was like, I keep choosing terrible men. Hi, Debbie. I keep choosing terrible men. I must just, that just must be my destiny in life. And it finally, I said to myself, you need to not be choosing any men. You need to sort you out. You're a mess. You're the common thread here. You're the reason that you can't make a relationship work. And I had to sort me out, right? Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in it. It's a habit. That's just so important. I still fall in it. It's a habit. You got to know who you are first. Exactly. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. That was just the most empowering thing for me. After I've told you guys this before, that I got raped in college, and I, you know, I got in that victim role. I was fearful all the time, and um, you know, like really fearful, scared for my own safety. I couldn't go to Walmart because when you walk down an aisle, people will get behind you, and that would be enough to make me so nauseous, that I would be sick. And I had to climb out of that, right? I had to realize at some point that I didn't have to keep being the person who fell in that hole in chapter 1, right? That it wasn't my fault and I was stuck in there for a really long time. I had to get me out. And so I just thought 4 was so empowering. I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, and then this person makes the choice. I walk around it. She's not going to fall in that hole. She's been in there so many times. She knows what it's like. She hates it in there, and she doesn't want to go through it again, so she walks around it. And then chapter 5, I walk down another street. That's the overcoming part. I always tell people, the day I was raped, I was a victim. And I was a victim for a little while, but in the same moment, as soon as it was over, I had survived it. And once you survived it, it's true. Once you survive it, you can, once you realize, once you kind of embrace that in your brain that you've survived it, that's the moment where you start, becoming somebody, who was raped. And you decide that you're not going to be a victim anymore. You're a survivor. You're working through the process, right? And so then there came a time where I overcame it, where I was able to forgive the person who did it. Not because that person deserved forgiveness, but because me wishing horrible things on that person and having so much spite in my heart for that person, it wasn't making things any better for me. It was making things worse. He didn't know. He didn't know that I was wishing all these terrible things and carrying all this anger in my heart. He didn't know. And so it wasn't hurting him, which is what I wanted to do, right? But you can't do that. And I finally had to say to myself, you know what? Forgiveness is giving up your desire to hate that person or be upset with that person or wish bad on that person, even though they deserve it. And you do it for you. You don't do it for them. You do it for you. Eventually it helps them, I'm sure. But you do it for you. And at that moment, you'll try to forgive. You'll try to get, past it. You'll try to, start praying for that person. And then you'll fall back into the hole of having all of these negative feelings about them again. And it just eats you up. But the more and more you keep trying, eventually you get out of it. And now, I can honestly say, sitting here, I don't have any negative feelings toward that person. None. If I saw that person today, it probably would bring up some physical anxiety for me. but I can handle myself. I wouldn't, of course, let that person victimize me again. And I just felt like, yeah, that's the message. And because it goes for everything in life, because we've all been victims of something, right? We've all had a bad relationship, or lost someone, lost a job. Maybe your whole life is just a mess, and this has been the story of your whole life, the same kind of situation, and you just keep falling in that same hole over and over again. The thing is realizing that you've fallen in the hole. And so today I wanted to talk about just embracing the experience. And I know it sounds crazy, like, well, how could you embrace the experience of rape? Well, you kind of have to. How can you embrace the experience of divorce? You have to embrace it, because the harder you try to push it away, the more it comes after you. And that's true. And so, if you try to push something down, grief is a really good example. If you try to push down grief, you may be able to push it down for a while, but then one day when you're not expecting it, it just jumps up and slaps you in the face. See, it feels like I've got a lot of echo. Looks okay. And I was thinking about that, how do you embrace a bad situation? So, when I was in the situation of having all the anaphylactic episodes all the time, I mean, every 2.5 years, 18 episodes, that's a lot. And I started, instead, and embracing it is different than surrendering to it, right? When you're embracing it, that's an action. You're still doing something. When you've surrendered to something, you've let it take you over. And I had surrendered to it for a while, because there was always this fear that I was going to die. What tomorrow might cause it. What, maybe if I lay down and go to sleep tonight, I'll wake up and I'll be in another attack. And it can make you really crazy and paranoid, because your body is completely out of your control. I always thought, after all that happened, I think I kind of understand what it might be like to get a cancer diagnosis, because you've got this thing growing in your body that you have no control over. It might kill you. And to me, it would make me feel claustrophobic that I was sharing my body with this. And that's how I felt with all of the mast cell issues. Just, my body was completely out of my control. I felt terrible all the time. I never knew when the next attack was going to hit, and I never knew if I was going to survive that one. And it's a horrible way to live. And so it when I finally got through to the end of it, I didn't know that the last episode was the last episode. Even though I was out of my body, and I got to, hang out with God and be upset with him. That's a very good way to put it. Embracing it isn't the same as recognizing it for what it is, right? So on that last time, I go and I'm with God, and I tell him I'm done. I don't want to go back into my body. If he can't heal me, I don't want to go back. And he's like, it's not me, it's you. I'm like, what do you mean? You're God. I can't fix this. And he said, you said you wanted to go back. You said you wanted to live. You said you wanted to try. But every time I put something in your path, you keep saying no. And I thought, okay, well, how am I supposed to say yes? Because I never know if I'm going to die or not, right? I never know what's coming. And it made it really hard to commit to anything. Actually, it was an excuse, but it was true. It would be hard for me to agree to a speaking engagement or an interview, because who knows, I might have an attack right before it. So I didn't do anything, and nothing changed. Nothing changed. Sometimes just doing one thing will change it. So when I went back that time, went back to my body, I embraced the idea that I could change it, that I could do what God said. I could say yes. I could start taking the opportunities he was sending my way. I could embrace this illness in the process and just take it a day at a time, not knowing what was coming. And if I had to cancel a talk or whatever, I would do that. But I was going to keep moving forward. I wasn't just going to stop. I was going to embrace this moment. I was going to embrace this illness, whatever it was, whether it was going to kill me or not was completely out of my control, but I was going to embrace it. And so I've had issues, since then, and everybody does, right? You have, Don and I, we've been, how long have we been together? Almost 13 years. And there's ups and downs, and one of the ways you make marriage work is you embrace that what this book says, life is messy. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be times when you feel really connected, and then there's going to be times where you just feel like there's nothing there anymore, and you can't get stuck there. You've got to move out of that. You've got to embrace, okay, I'm in a time where things aren't making sense, my relationship's not making sense, or whatever it is. um, I'm going to embrace that this is a time of unknowing and uncertainty for me. And I'm going to be my best self in this. I'm not going to cheat on my spouse. I'm not going to bad talk them to people. Um, I'm going to do, what's funny in our hearts when things get like that, you kind of try to shut down because you don't want to get hurt, right? It makes sense. It is a protective measure that is good in many instances, but definitely not in relationships. And you have to say to yourself, okay, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why I don't feel as connected to this person, or I feel like there's this chasm between us, but I'm going to do the thing that I wouldn't, normally do if this isn't normal for you. And I'm going to start reaching out, and I'm going to start trying to create a space for that connection to come back. And that's how you get through a marriage. And I know because I've been so bad at marriage in the past. That's how you get through a marriage. You put yourself out there. Now, you can't control what the other person does, but here's the thing. If something happens and it all falls apart and that person leaves you, you can go to bed every night knowing you did everything you could, and there's no fault in you because you didn't cheat, you didn't badmouth them, you didn't pull away, you didn't get bitter, you kept loving. And it's so hard. It is so hard to keep loving when it's not getting returned, or when you just feel like, um, that there's apathy on the other part. It is a choice. And I mean, think about it. Even with your kids, when your kids are being horrible, pretend they're teenagers, not little ones, and they're doing things that are very stressing, very upsetting, putting a lot of pressure on the family itself. You have to make a decision every day. I don't know what that beep was. um, I love this child. The child's not being very lovable, but I love this child. I don't like them at this moment, but I do love them. And I'm going to keep reaching out. I'm going to keep trying to connect. I'm going to keep pushing forward. And then if something happens and that child still walks away from you or doesn't want the relationship, maybe it's an adult child, you've done everything you can do, right? Without enabling them if there's bad behavior going on. But you've done everything that you can do. And it does give you a little peace, even though it's not the outcome that you wanted. Poverty, equally, people stay because they don't want to hurt the other person. It never works either. No, and you have to decide you're staying for the right reason. Ultimately, getting through those hard times is what builds the relationship. It's so funny. When I was married to my first husband, our nephew and brother-in-law were in a terrible accident. And my brother-in-law died shortly after at the hospital. And then we had to disconnect life support on my nephew, who I think was 7 at the time. It was horrible. And I remember driving home from the hospital, and we had to stop and pull over at a rest area and go to sleep. And I slept like I had never slept in my life. It was the most emotionally exhausting thing I'd ever been through, short of my divorce. But at that time, I was still married, so that was it. And I remember being so consumed with how awful that situation was, watching his mother go through it. My sister-in-law had married her high school sweetheart. She'd only been able to have one child, and then she loses them both. And I just remember, watching her soul just be crushed. And it just killed me. And I thought, gosh, what do you do? What do you say? There's nothing you can do or say. There's nothing. And I was just in such a dark place when that happened, and throughout the events that happened, close to that time after, that just didn't make any sense. They didn't make any sense at all. And I remember thinking to myself, the way that I can be my best person, I probably didn't put it in this language, but the way I could be my best person in this situation is to remember him and to be there for her, and to cherish my own children, because you never know. And that was the decision I made. So like if Don and I are going through a rough patch, I make a decision. I can, even if he's wrong, right? If he's the one who started it, I can say to myself, yes, he started it. He's fallible and flawed, just like I am. And I can either just shut him off and then neither of us learn anything and neither of us grow and we don't get to where we wanted to go, which was all the way through together. You have to, I know so many people who get married and they say to themselves, well, if it doesn't work, I can always get divorced. Well, there's your problem. You fashioned your exit plan at the beginning. Now, I'm not talking about people who are in a relationship like, when I was married to my first husband, he was cheating and he left. He abandoned us. And I still didn't want to divorce him. And I remember the pastor came to me and he said, look, you're not breaking your vows if he has abandoned you and has been unfaithful. There are biblical precedents for, there's a basis for being able to end that relationship because there is no relationship anymore. If you're in a relationship where you're in danger, of course, that's something that you want to get out of. You can't fix that other person. But I'm talking about the things that we do have control over day to day to day. You're working with somebody that you really don't like. You get into a rut of going in and behaving the same way about that person that you don't like. We had this guy, I will say his name. So I worked at this hospital and there was a guy that wanted to be charge nurse and he had left his previous job. I'm actually going to change his name. He had left his previous job. He had gotten in trouble for sexually harassing some of the women. And so he left and he had come to work where we were. And I knew this backstory because I knew somebody who had worked with him at that place who had not been sexually harassed by him. And he wanted to be the charge nurse. And so he was really kissing up to the director of nursing and to her boss. And it just went I just hate disingenuous, right? And so one day he's sitting across the hall from me and we have these wheeled chairs and these little kind of drop down desks that drop down out of the wall in the hallway. And I'm sitting there just charting and he slides over to me and propositions me. And I was so offended. I'd never had a married man proposition me. I think I put off a vibe that's like, yeah, that's not something you could do with me. I don't know, maybe, or maybe they're just not interested. I don't know. But he slides across and he says this thing to me, which was not even, I'm like, wow, does that work? He says this to me and I looked at him and I said, not in a million years would I take you up on that. I said, what kind of man would cheat on his wife and his daughters that way? And he's like, well, I wouldn't be cheating on my daughters. And I'm like, no, that's where you're wrong. When you cheat on your whole family. And I don't want to be a part of that. And I just turned around and started charting again. So one day we're all, doing our stuff and they call everybody to the nurse's station. So we all go up to the nurse's station and I have to think of, I got to think of two names that rhyme. Isn't that terrible that I can't think of it? John and Ron. Okay. So the guy's name is Ron. And the lady that is over, the director of nursing, is there. And she was kind of goofy anyway, but she was a little bit older than us. And she's there and she's going on and on about how wonderful Ron is. He's going to get the Employee of the Month award, right? And so she's like, what I love about Ron, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, his name is John, but nobody wants to say anything. And he's just standing there, pretending like he doesn't notice. And she's like, what I love about Ron is if I ask Ron to do something, he will always get it done. Ron is just, and she just kept saying his name and we're all dying, right? We're trying not to laugh. What I love about Ron is I can just always count on him. And I don't ever have to go back and make sure that Ron has done the thing that in fact, Ron goes the extra yard, right? Or the extra mile. And so I stand up and I'm like, well, let's all give Ron a hand, right? And so we all start clapping and everyone's dying because his name's not Ron, but he's so great and he's the Employee of the Month. Mary Lou, that was her name, Mary Lou. And I just thought that's perfect because here he was so excited to get this accolade and, had been inappropriate with so many of us and gets it and she doesn't get his name right. And it was just perfect. I'm like, oh man, like so rarely do you get to see karma. but we got to see it that day with Ron, or Ron John, if you prefer. I've got to pull up this video for you guys because I wanted to show you an example of embracing the moment. Let me get this real quick. I should have pulled it up before, but I was having technical problems. That's my excuse. And of course, I always have a hard time remembering exactly where I saw it. It is, I want to say here. Hold on, give me a little minute. Oh, I know where it's at. I should have just taken you guys with me, and then you can watch me. You can see all the channels I subscribe to. Know my dark obsessions with different podcasters. Hold on. All right. I had Don watch it. I think we watched it like 5 times last night, and like that is seriously one of the greatest videos I've ever seen. And I watch a lot of videos. Bloggerty Shmoo says, equally people stay because they don't want to hurt the other person. Yeah. Being called Ronald is punishment. It was so funny. Because, you know, he just thought he was so much better than all of us that he was getting this award. Okay, here's this video. I have to remember how to do this. I've got all new equipment this week, so it'll take me a little minute. Eventually it'll be faster, but it won't be today. Okay, newsfeed. I have a little button I can push now. It's pretty exciting. Oh, gotta come back over here. Let's do this one. Okay, you ready? I'm gonna go to like the 29-second mark. Oh. They're gonna do a dance. And it's about the kid that steals the show. I'm sure you can figure out who that is. He is embracing the moment. What middle schooler has this kind of rhythm? He gets his little middle school butt going. He's so cute. What a funny kid. And he so plays the crowd. He's a very good dancer. Yes, electric showmanship. He's so extra. Where is my cursor? Look at him go. Isn't he adorable? This is how you live your life, guys. Wasn't that great? Hold on, it's gonna go to the next video. I gotta figure out how to get my cursor over and stop it. All right, let me come back over here. All right, that's what I'm talking about. This is so cute. Yes, so cute, my Norman, for sure. Pope Smokes. I hope they play this video for his wedding. You know what? Can you imagine the kind of skills he's going to have for his reception? I mean, that kid, he had liquid hips. He just was so good. I thought it was great, and it just made my day. And it was funny because, um, things are stressful. I'm getting ready to have surgery on my shoulder, and it's such. And I'm just, you guys, I, you know, I see people on podcasts all the time and they're like, I don't mean to talk about myself. And this is just a different kind of podcast. I share my life with you guys. And so I'm going to have this big shoulder surgery, which I am not looking forward to. And I was sharing with my husband, I said, it's just scary for me because, surgery was what started. Hold on, I'm trying to get this screen smaller over here. Surgery is what got the mast cell thing going when I had my spinal surgery. And Dan's like, everybody's watching. Debbie says, because you're just that good. He is just that good. And so I was telling my husband, I said, I know I've got to have this shoulder surgery if I'm ever going to get used to this arm again, because I can't, it's just ridiculous. I can't do hardly anything with it. I can't pick up a coffee cup. I can't do anything. And it's been 6 months. It's time, right? I mean, I put it off as long as I can. And I was just kind of expecting a little rotator cuff surgery. I've had that before. It was no big deal. But I've torn the labrum, which is a cartilagey kind of suction cup that holds your shoulder together. And so, like yesterday, I was sitting on the couch with my arm against, this is the bad arm, against the couch. And I raised my arm and raised my elbow at the same time to pick up my cup. And I could feel my shoulder snapped and I could feel it like try to pop out of place. And that's because the labrum is torn. So the labrum holds everything together. And the guy told me, he's like, well, if it was just your rotator cuff, yes, I will definitely keep you updated. If it was just your rotator cuff, we could probably do some therapies, do an injection, see if you get any better, and kind of go in steps. But he said, with the labrum, if we don't fix that, your arm is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's already, I can't go more than straight out to my side or straight up, just at 90 degrees. And I can't carry anything. And so like the other day when I went out onto the ice, I didn't realize the steps were iced, but I caught myself. Well, the thing is, I can only carry things with the right arm because the left arm is bad. So if I'm going to fall, I only have my left arm to catch me. And I keep hurting my left arm because I've got to grab or do something. You don't realize how often you get off kilter and you just correct because all of your upper limbs work. So I was telling Don, I said, I'm just scared. What if this starts the whole mast cell thing over again? I can't go through it again. And, he's like, we are praying people. We are believing people. And you have a whole tribe of people who pray for you, and they got you through COVID. And they're going to get you through this. I'm going to get you through this. You're going to be okay. And I thought, okay, I'm going to embrace the experience. Not that I want to have shoulder surgery, but by being scared and being worried, one of the best things you can do to trigger a mast cell reaction is have a lot of anxiety, because it causes certain chemicals in your body, and that can cause mast cell degranulation, and there you are. And so I thought, okay, well, I may do well, I may not do well. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of control over that, except for embracing the experience and saying it is what it is. I'm going to have this surgery. I'm going to do very well. Not going to have any kind of recurrence of the mast cell thing. And I've got a ton of people who pray for me who are my family now. And I am relying on them, and I'm relying on God, and I'm trusting in God that he has put all of you with me for a reason, and me with you for a reason. This is kind of a symbiotic relationship. I know a lot of podcasts just talk about, whatever the current events are, but it's different here. I consider you guys friends. I worry, like, I thought, gosh, if my show ever got so big that I couldn't read every comment and respond to every person, that wouldn't feel right to me. So I'm kind of hoping it doesn't get to be so huge that I can't talk to you guys, because you're such a part of my life in this relationship. And when I started doing this show, I didn't actually start doing this show. I just started broadcasting when I had COVID, and I broadcast every day, and it rolled into this. And God had said to me, I'm putting you in the fight, and don't ever think you're alone. If you think you're alone, turn around and see the legions I've sent to help you. And so it's so funny, because people will send me emails and they're like, oh, I heard your story, I watched this interview, and it was so helpful to me. I get a lot of people, or regularly I get people who will say, I was suicidal and your video came up, and I see things completely differently. You saved my life. That is huge. And I think, wow, who am I that God would use me that way? I'm just a retired nurse. I don't have any special skills, um, but isn't that the way of God? Think of Moses. Moses was like, whoa, I've got a stutter. Surely you can get somebody more equipped than me to do this. And God was like, no, I want you. Because it confounds the world. It confounds the world when God takes somebody who isn't equipped, equips them, and helps that person fulfill whatever it is that needs to be done. That's the miracle in life, right? It's not that somebody, who's had a news show forever could come and do a good podcast. It's that a person who's never done anything like this is technologically not in a good space at all. But for some reason, people will still hang out with me and listen and share their lives with me. And so for as much as, people tell me they get from me, I'm always blown away, because I think, man, they have no idea how much I get from them and how much I learn from you guys. Dan's like, I love that. When are you getting the surgery? Sorry, I missed that. So I just found out last week. You didn't really miss anything. I haven't been on here to talk about it. So I went to the doctor. Today's Friday? I went to the doctor Monday, and we decided, they did the ultrasound and everything, and they decided I was going to need the surgery. And I have my surgical consult on Tuesday, and I'll get a date on Tuesday. So by Friday, I'll have a date for you guys. Yes, we will pray for you. I know you guys will. Debbie says, you and John, he fell down 3 garage steps. Oh no! Has a broken bone, torn cartilage, torn meniscus. So he hurt his knee. Brace, crutches, wheelchair. Oh, bless his heart. He's old. You'll heal and give God the glory. John will heal too. Oh, thank you, my Norman. That's very kind. Praying for you. Beautiful miracle of connection, Penny. I love listening to you. You guys are so sweet. So I don't know if you guys saw, on to the next sweet, wonderful thing. And thank you for that donation. What was the next? Oh, so I retired the COVID-19 Warrior Show, because, I mean, really, what's the choice, right? We don't want this to go on forever. So if you didn't see the video, there's a video up, and it talks about that I'm retiring the show, and that it's now going to be called the Nurse Penny Show. So, and the reason I went with Nurse Penny is because I have a friend who podcasts, and I frequently super chat him, and I always say Nurse Penny here. And I don't know how I got to starting with that, but I lead with that all the time now. And so I was telling Don, I'm like, what am I going to do now that the COVID emergency's over, and, all this stuff. And I said, I got to think of a new name for the show, but I don't know what to call it. And I was like, duh, the Nurse Penny Show. So we'll start that at 9:30. And I'm going to try to have more of a healthcare bent, but I do have to cover some current events, because I think we should talk about these things. But I wanted to open it up for you guys. If you have any healthcare questions, or, weird body questions, any questions that you would be embarrassed to ask your doctor, ask them on a live broadcast and I'll answer them. And don't be embarrassed, because you would be amazed how many people have the same question, right? And they don't want to ask their doctor. Um, they're embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. Hold on, I'm trying to see that. I didn't want to have to put my glasses back on because the light reflects off it. You'll have a date for me. Yes. Thank you. I need to mingle again. Or did I misunderstand? Look, Bloggerty Schmoo, I'm keeping an eye out. If I see a man that I think is good enough for you, I'll definitely send him your way. Who knows? I could run into anybody. I mean, I'm going to see a surgeon. He could be single. You just let me know what your specs are. I'll see if I can find that person for you. But you don't live close. How will I, I don't think you're in Kentucky. No, not asking. Debbie, you should ask. So, you know what? Here, I'll give you an embarrassing thing. So, for years, and I am diligent about my hygiene, right? So, for you guys are like, oh, cringe, here it comes. No, it's not gross. Even though I diligently keep my hair clean, I would notice that, like, when I would scratch my head, there would be like this waxy stuff on my head, and I'd scrub and scrub and couldn't get it off. And I just thought, man, I must be the only person in the world. I'm not going to ask my doctor about that because, she'll just think I'm not bathing or something. And so I Googled it. Thank God for Google, right? And they were like, oh, yeah, it's a type of eczema or something like that. And it gets on the scalp. And they recommended this scalp scrub and this little brush that's got these little kind of rubbery fingers in it that are a little dense. And you wash your hair with it. Problem solved. But for years, I was super embarrassed about that and didn't want to. I'm sure you guys have got something better than that. But that's one that I can give you. Oh, dang it. I hit it before I read it. Hi, Penny. I listened to your NDE, and it was the start of a big spiritual shift. This is Annalise Crum. Thanks. What would you say to someone who loves Jesus but is afraid of dying as a mom of a young child? I would say plan for it because you're going to die. You're probably not going to die now. You're probably going to die of an old age, but you're going to die eventually. And I think if you plan for the eventuality, it takes a lot of the fear out of it. So make sure you have life insurance. Make sure you have a close relative or a good friend, if you're not married, or, make sure your husband would know how to take care of your child in your absence. And once you've done all of that, just enjoy your child because you will whittle away the time you have enjoying your child, worrying about your death. Jolie says, can you tell me a little bit about vitamin D hydroxy 25? Yes. So the hydroxy 25 is a test that you take to see what your vitamin D level is. I will tell you, they'll tell you that a normal level is between 30 to 100. I like all my folks around 50, between 50 and 100. Anywhere in there is fine. Generally, unless you're overweight or you have certain comorbidities, 5,000 milligrams or 5,000 international units a day will get you there. If you're going to take vitamin D, take vitamin D3, not D2. D2 is the prescription one. Take D3. Your body absorbs it better. And take K2 with it. And there's a good brand. It's called Bronson. And Bronson has a K2 and D3. Just go to Amazon, Bronson, Bronson. And it'll say K3D2. And it's in exactly the right proportion. It's cheap. It lasts like 4 months. And it's amazing. I started talking a lot about vitamin D3 when COVID hit because I saw a good study that showed that people who had a vitamin D level of, if it was under 20, your risk of ending up with that first original virus, of ending up in the hospital if you got COVID, or no, your risk of dying if you ended up in the hospital from COVID was like 81%. If you were at 30, or yeah, I think that was it. And then if you were 30, it was a little, it was like, it dropped to 4%. So 30 is just enough to keep your bones healthy. I really like people at 50. And if you do not already have a vitamin D deficiency, a lot of times the insurance company will not pay for you to have your vitamin D level checked. So make sure you mention to your doctor that you've been having bone pain. Yes, you have, and that you think you might need your vitamin D level checked, and then your insurance will cover it. Love the Medical Live. Yeah, and you guys, that show will start at 9:30. I cannot do it on YouTube. YouTube keeps taking down my videos. Anything that I say that's contrary to what the CDC might say, my videos get taken down. I've already got a strike on YouTube. So what'll happen at the end of this video is I will shut off YouTube, and you guys will have to come over to Rumble to watch. And the link is in the description already for you. Love the medical live idea. I'm glad. Boston, close enough. I will see what I can do. You guys. I love Lucy. Veggie Metavitamin. I remember that. That's the one where she gets drunk on the stuff. It's like some kind of snake oil. Hello, Michelle. Mine is 9. Nurse prescribing D2. Yeah, you want D3. And just talk to them and tell them you'd like to switch to D3, and it should be fine. They'll be able to give you a better idea of what dosage you need based on how much D2 you're taking and where your vitamin D level is. Debbie says, no, Pope Smoke says, I trust you more than any medical person I've ever had. But asking questions on a stream would be terrifying for me. I would have to send an email. Well, you can do that. Or you know what else you can do? You can just create a new username and then just pop up whatever embarrassing question you want. And I will answer it. And you know what's funny is, even if it's something embarrassing, everyone will have a good laugh over it. And nobody knows who you are anyway. So just ask it, because maybe that person has scales growing on their private parts too, and would love to know the answer, and they're too scared to ask. And see, you would make the world, I wouldn't know what to do about that. I'd have to get back to you on that one. Hopefully that's not it. What time is it? 9:20. Is that 6? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Any advice on health anxiety and health trauma? Ask me at 9:30, or ask me on the next broadcast. Come over to Rumble and watch, because I won't have time to answer that here. True, LOL. So I'm going to pray us out, guys, because it's almost 9:26, and somebody always has a question afterwards. And then we'll go on over to the Nurse Penny Show. The link for it, again, is in the YouTube description. So just come on over and you can watch there. That way I don't get banned on YouTube and lose my NDE channel. All right. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, and for friends who are so supportive. And I know, it's funny. People will say, I'll pray for you. But I really believe that when these people say it, they mean it. And I really pray for them. And I just thank you so much for giving me a group who prays for me. And I would hope that they would take to heart the message of embracing the experience, no matter what the experience is, and figuring out what they can learn from it, how they can grow from it, how they can be their best selves, and how they can move through it and on to the next thing, and not get stuck in one of the stages that we talked about earlier in the podcast. I just thank you so much for giving me this avenue to reach people and using me. Why you would use me, I don't know, but thank you for using me to put good out into the world, because the world is in sore need of some good. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Nurse Penny sounds like a 70s show. It does. Or sitcom. I was trying to think of, there was something like it that I watched. It wasn't a nurse thing, but it had a name like that. I do not mind all the questions. So I go live every Friday night on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter and my author page on Facebook and my regular Facebook page at 8:30 for the Life from a Near-Death Experience podcast. And then we'll bridge right into the Nurse Penny podcast at 9:30. And I've got stuff pulled up to talk about in that podcast, and you can ask questions. We go longer in that podcast. You guys, thank you so much. Godspeed to you, Penny, and all yours. Yeah, and I will, yes, Eastern Standard Time. I will, Tuesday, I'll put up a video either Tuesday or Wednesday and let you guys know for sure when my surgery is. I can't imagine it's going to be super quick. I don't know how long it takes to schedule these things. I'm thinking a couple weeks, but what do I know? I don't know. Y'all join in. So glad I caught you live. Yeah, me too. I didn't know if you get notifications. I know a lot of people were saying they were struggling with not getting notifications on Rumble. So remind me when we get on the other podcast, and I will go over how to do that to make sure that you get your, in fact, I'll try to go through it on the screen and show you. So, because a lot of people don't know how to set up their notifications. They should be automatic, but for some reason, some people on Rumble aren't getting them automatically. But YouTube, I'm going to shut you guys off. I hope I know how to do that. And And then you can come on over. We're just going to continue on over onto Rumble with the Nurse Penny Show. So much love to you. And if you're not going over to see us the other place, I will see you on Friday.